Stop being afraid of actually getting everything you want. Believe in the concept that you can have everything you desire. Tweeted by Melanie Fiona. Hey everyone, welcome to Tuesday's episode of the Toy Talks podcast, and I am of course your host, Miss Toya Washington. Each and every Tuesday we gather here, and we share and we talk and we learn and we grow. And today is simply another Tuesday where we get to do the same thing, and I'm always excited to deliver a podcast episode. And recently I've been doing some Instagram lives. I don't typically do them as much during the pandemic. Well, actually we're still in the pandemic, but during the lockdown I did quite a few of them, especially in the early stages of lockdown. Less so afterwards, just simply because life. However, recently I've done a couple of them and they've gone down really well. The feedback's been really great. And if you don't follow me on Instagram, my personal Instagram page is Toya_Washington. So this episode was actually inspired by a conversation that I had with somebody today, and it's called Blackexit, as in Brexit, but Blackexit. Do you get it? I'm hoping that you guys will get it, okay? God, I don't even know where to start. So you know how we do things here. Like, before we get into the podcast episode, we talk about a couple of things that maybe have happened, topical issues. I share my opinion, and then we just take it from there, really, don't we? So I don't know why I feel very pushed to say this, but a lot of you may know, especially if you follow me on social media, that I am doing my traditional wedding later on this year. I had my registry wedding July last year. And for me, doing a trad wedding was more about paying respect to the ancestors. My father has passed away, and spiritually it means that he is an ancestor as well. Equally, my dad and I always practiced how he would walk me down the aisle, and he shared a lot of cultural knowledge with me. And being the only girl, being his only girl, I know that there is no way that I could do a registry wedding without, doing a trad wedding. It's just not, for me, I see marriage as being the trad, yeah? I understand that the legal aspect of it has to be done with how the white man has dictated for it to be legally recognised in the UK and in general. But for me, the real marriage takes place when you pay respect to the ancestors and basically go before them and declare to them that you would like them to bless your union. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I think for me, you guys know there's a podcast episode talk about my relationship with my mum, and it was done as a part 1, and I don't think I ever did a part 2, always knowing that there would be a part 2. And for me, it was kind of going through this process of doing the trad wedding, knowing full well that my mum is not in my life and therefore won't be present at my trad wedding. And the part 2 would be kind of explaining how I felt in this process. So I knew it was a future episode, and equally I didn't know how I was going to feel. And there was a conversation I was having with a friend, and she said, Toya, we've made a choice not to live in trauma, because our entire existence has been akin to trauma. And when you decide that you no longer want to continue to breathe life into trauma, you then seek healing. And it was quite a deep conversation, because for me, I never chose the path of having a dysfunctional relationship with my mum. But when I made the choice to safeguard my mental health and safeguard myself, I had to make a choice to walk away. And it wasn't a decision I took lightly. I kept going back. It was very much I would say it was almost like a mentally abusive in that sense, because the person's not going to change. They mistreat you, and yet you go back hoping for the change that you're never going to see. And when I really went to therapy and committed to my healing from trauma, I realised that I've actually been through a hell of a lot. And whilst I never wanted or never imagined that I would be planning my own trad, I would say that even though there's been lots of ups and downs, it's probably been really peaceful for me, and peaceful in a sense that I don't feel like I have to do certain things to please certain people. I don't feel as though I have to buy the love and affection of people so that they would see me as worthy of being able to do a trad. I think there's a stigma, and there has been always, when I speak about the mother and daughter relationship, I talk about that stigma of society considering the fact that, society looking at the daughter as the problem, and society only ever considering the feelings of a mother rather than looking at the repercussions of a toxic relationship or having a narcissistic parent who actually has traumatized the child. And if you want to talk about mother and daughter relationship, it's, that daughter didn't decide to come into the world. A choice was made. Yeah, a choice was made to bring this daughter into the world. If you bring this daughter into the world, you have to expect that child will become an adult. And I have always said this about my own mother, and I know a lot of you will relate to this, but I always felt like my mother knew how to mother a child, but didn't know how to mother a young adult. And part of that is going through the process of allowing your child to be able to express themselves, being able to be humble enough to also learn from your child. Sometimes, in my view and in my opinion, being the product of a dysfunctional relationship or traumatic relationship with my mum, every child needs to be mothered or parented differently according to the needs of the child. And my need was just to feel loved. And my need to feel loved came from the fact that I didn't feel love from my mum. I say all this to say that I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, it's been the easiest thing in the world kind of sorting out my trad. It hasn't been the easiest, especially when it came to like buying material and stuff. And this is why I'm so grateful to Simply I Shall Be as a company, because what they do is you pay for their service and they procure material for you. And they have a whole they have different packages. You have consultations, they do PowerPoint presentations in terms of kind of building on your initial consultation with them to really understand kind of what you want from your Ashilby. And they did such an amazing service for me, and they took away the trauma of me having to go to Peckham or Dartford or whatever, or Liverpool Street to go and get the material by myself. Because I don't think I would have gone with like my aunt or someone. I think I would have ended up going on my own, because it would have been that traumatizing that I wouldn't actually want someone to witness that trauma. But Simply I Shall Be, they took away that trauma for me, and it's made the process of the trad that much more easier. I think that I've always been the type of person growing up that felt I always had to prove something, and it came from having a dysfunctional relationship with my mum, whereby I felt like I was never good enough. So I was always pursuing, I always felt like I was pursuing an acknowledgement from her that I was good enough. And then I realised that I would never be good enough for my mum, because it just is that way. And actually, it's not about whether I'm good enough for my mum. It's about whether I feel good enough within myself. So going through this trad wedding has been a process of discovery, a process of healing, and a process of peace. Process of peace because I don't feel as though I'm having to please certain people and feeling as though I'm insignificant because my mum thinks that she's the centre of attention and this is her wedding. I saw how my mum treated my brother when he got married, and to be quite honest with you, he did everything that I felt he needed to do to be able to kind of please my mum, because that's what it is really. And yet she was not pleased. So talk less of me, who I'm her least favourite person in the world. But I don't have that issue. I think the bit that's tough is also people will expect to see my mum there, right? And, there are people that don't know the situation, and I don't feel like I have to explain it. And I feel like anyone that comes to me to ask me where my mum is, I don't think they're going to like my response, because if you don't see the person there, the person's not there, innit? You're not going to come and ask me where my dad is because you know he's dead. So if my mum ain't there, you just know that she ain't there because she's chosen not to be there. And I'm okay with that. And I feel like some people just need to understand that part of people's healing is also removing themselves from toxic relationships. I don't want to be mentally arrested in this cycle of trauma. And I've chosen to take myself out of that trauma. And I think a lot of people, you know, who have very tempestuous relationship with their mothers, one of the things that keeps them in that cycle is the fear of not having their mothers at certain periods of their life or in certain celebratory events for risk of people's opinion. And even recently, like my aunt, she said to me, oh, I think you should call your mum. And I just stopped her midway. I said, listen, you're asking me to open the door to trauma, which means to me that you're not prioritizing my mental health. And if you're not prepared to prioritize my mental health, then let me do that. I'm happy to prioritize my mental health, and that's what I've chosen to do. And your job as my aunt is to respect that. If you can't respect the fact that I'm prioritizing my mental health, then I don't mind you not attending my wedding. I've had to be quite frank, because our culture is as such that it's so entrenched and ingrained that, you know, the emotions of the child or of the child of the parent. So I'm an adult, but I'm my mother's child, right? So when I reference myself as a child, I mean my mother's child, right? Because I always used to say as well, I was like, Mum, I'm your child, I'm not a child. And she always struggled with that concept. I don't think my mum's a bad person, but I just think that she's toxic and she's selfish. I think she's angry and she's bitter. And the reason why I talk about it is because there are so many black women that are going through really difficult times with their parent, their mother. And I watched something on TikTok. Jackie Aina was talking about the firstborn daughter and basically the trauma of feeling like you owe. I don't feel like I owe my mum anything. I don't. I feel like I would want to do certain things, but I don't want to do those things because I feel like I owe them to her. In the same way that I kind of feel as though if you love on your child enough, when I say enough, but if you love on your child, if you breathe life into your child, if you encourage your child and cover your child with love and still allow your child to be free-spirited enough to be independent in their thinking and in their choices, you won't have to ask your child for anything because your child will just give and just do. When you make things duty-bound and you put contingencies around those duties, you are placing that child of yours in a position of resentment. And that's the truth. I definitely felt for several years that I was just a commodity. I definitely felt like a cash point. And I definitely felt very used by certain family members. And I don't feel that way anymore because I've made a choice to remove myself. And it wasn't an overnight decision, but it was a lot of therapy. And there was a lot of soul searching and there was a lot of realization. You know, when you start prioritizing your mental health, for some people, it becomes offensive to them because they're no longer in the power to be able to abuse and take advantage of your inability to see past the smoke and mirrors. And I definitely will hold up my hands and say that I felt more free in the last 4 years than I have felt in my entire life. The freedom from trauma. I'm choosing to free myself from that trauma. So it's an ongoing process through therapy, conversation. I'm choosing to be happy. And 2 episodes ago, I said to you guys, I've made the decision to be happy because for a long time, I haven't known how to be happy. Hence why I would achieve certain things but not give myself permission to enjoy them. I have also made the decision to prioritize myself. I don't think in the last few years of my life that I've ever understood that I was allowed to prioritize myself without feeling guilt and feeling selfish. I don't feel selfish anymore. Because when I prioritize myself, it means that I understand the value of who I am. And in understanding the value of who I am, I have to be able to pour into myself as well. And pouring into myself is going and getting the therapy and doing the work. But it also is about existing in a world whereby I feel that I'm allowed to be happy and allowed to enjoy certain things. I definitely think it's also important that we talk about normalizing loving your career. You may not love your job, but if you love your career, you can work anywhere. And my career for me has been a saving grace because it enabled me to concentrate on being great at something or being good at something, being able to have the freedom of choice of how I navigated my career, but equally understanding some of the limitations that I approached the world of work with due to preconceived notions and ideas from the home and from our culture, which kind of encourages us to be subservient. And through that subservience, we go to the workplace with a vulnerability. And you're working in and amongst white people who see vulnerability as an opportunity to wield power. And once they wield power, you begin the cycle of oppression. And I love the fact that we're able to have very candid conversation here. And we talk about the world of work and life and how we navigate the world of work to become successful. And for a lot of us, our parents or their experiences teach us to be subservient. But we're never actually taught how to navigate the world of work to be successful. Who has ever been taught how to be successful? We as a community, growing up, we haven't necessarily been taught how to be successful. Success is holding on to a job. That's not success. It's a skill, but it's not success. And I think that as, the generations have evolved and as our thinking has evolved and as our ability to communicate through social media, through podcasting, we've allowed ourselves to open our minds to other opportunities to understand how we define success. And I would like to think that the podcast is feeding into how you approach the world of work, navigate it, and how you define your own success. That being said, I think there is going to be an episode dedicated to marriage, and I am currently watching Ultimatum on Netflix, so there is going to be a podcast episode talking about that. Because listen, we don't work not to play, yeah? And when I say play, I mean you can't just be working. Like, we're working to build, we're working to do all these things, but there's a life that we're hoping to build and benefit and enjoy as well. And that's why I try to keep a balance between, obviously, the core essence of this podcast is about the world of work, but we also talk about life as well, which is affected by, our life choices in terms of the world of work. So if you haven't already started watching, please go ahead on Netflix and watch Ultimatum. I'm on episode 3 and I'm really taking my time here and taking notes. So yeah, look out for that podcast episode. Secondly, I think, what do they call the person in the House of Commons? The ones that, I don't even know what they call that person. Basically the one that kind of keeps order within the House of Commons. I don't know what they call them. I think they owe MP Dawn Butler an apology. Dawn Butler in July of 2021 last year, in the summer, she was basically thrown out of the House of Commons. Dawn Butler is a black female MP. And the reason why she was thrown out of the House of Commons is because she called Boris Johnson a liar. And despite being pushed and reprimanded into retracting what she said, she refused to, and quite rightly so. Because now Boris Johnson has been fined, and they're calling it Partygate, and it's effectively breaching COVID restriction rules. Him, I think Rishi Sunak, and a couple of other people within the Tory government have been fined for breaking COVID rules that they implemented during the lockdown. And that would mean that when he was questioned in the House of Parliament, that he misled Parliament. So now what's happened is an independent investigation is currently underway to investigate whether Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, deliberately and willfully misled the members of the House of Commons, effectively Parliament. But I'm trying to understand, because if Boris Johnson was a black man, they would have got rid of him long time ago. But it's either that he has this. It's either that they really don't know who's going to replace him, and there hasn't been a clear leader. Rishi Sunak, they have literally, tried to destroy any chance of him becoming the next Prime Minister with the whole thing about his wife's taxes and his green card holding and all this, and ministerial code and all of that. But Boris Johnson's white privilege is like a supreme white privilege I've never seen before, because of all the things that he has done, of how he has led the country, his decision making, his inability to be truthful, in my opinion, and yet he still remains the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. If Parliament isn't a direct reflection of the world of work, I don't know what is. You'll have managers doing the most diabolical things, breaching all types of employment law, rules and regulations. You'll see.
On the Future is Freelance podcast, we believe freelancing is the future of life, work, and everything. So whether you're brand new to working independently or you're a seasoned pro, we'd love you to listen. Every episode unpacks new ideas on how to make your future freelance. Whether you need to achieve business minimalism, survive a solopreneur crisis, or find the right digital nomad visa and community, we've got you covered, alongside actionable insight on everything from finding gigs to outsourcing support services, even mastering TikTok with no dancing required. Subscribe to The Future is Freelance on your favourite podcasting app via the link in your show notes.
White managers, white male men doing all types of nonsense, and yet HR will investigate and these people will still hold on to their jobs because they're, and I think part of it is because some people within the world of work don't want to do the fight. Some people really don't understand how to navigate the world of work to be able to use the rules and regulations of the system to be able to advocate for ourselves. However, for the basis of the example I'm giving, it's more about how white people, especially white men, are able to break the rules and still hold on to their positions. It's a white privilege thing. Because a non-black person could never. It's impossible. And, I speak to my friends who live in different various countries, and the UK scene is a bit of a laughing stock, to be quite honest with you. It's embarrassing. And yet, he's still Prime Minister. It's diabolical. It's just shocking. And it's almost disappointing, because sometimes I always think, if you want to know what happens in the world of work, watch what's happening in politics, because you see things that happen politically play out in our workplaces, and it's not many people that are a Dawn Butler who will stand up and be counted and stand up and speak the truth and stand up and highlight unfairness and highlight things that contravene holding office as a member of Parliament. It takes a certain type of confidence and it takes a certain type of personality to be able to stand up in the House of Commons and say the active reigning Prime Minister is a liar. And I fully support Dawn Butler, but her, like other fellow black female MPs, there's so many of them that are owed an apology that I doubt they will ever receive. The way she was treated when she stood up in the House of Commons and spoke about, she didn't just call him a liar. She justified it. She really was succinct. And the way they tried to, it was almost akin to bullying, try to bully her into apologising, threatening that she will have to leave. All of this. And now here we are, fast forward a few months, and now he's being investigated. The very Prime Minister that she was talking about in the House of Commons is now being investigated for deliberately and willfully misleading the House of Commons and Parliament. Like, what the hell? So recently I shared on the podcast that, and I actually vlogged it as well, I went to pick up my new car. So I bought an SUV. I've been driving an Audi A1 Sport for about 2 years, and I bought that car outright. It was one of my dreams. Like, I always wanted to just buy a car outright. And ordinarily, when you buy a car outright, it depreciates in value. However, because of COVID, because of the chips they use in the test kits, they use them in cars as well. It has meant that there has been a surge in demand of second-hand cars because of the delay in producing new cars. So for me, my car, which I purchased for just shy of 11,000, I mean, if it hadn't been for the pandemic, my car probably would have been worth about £8,500–9,000, and I ended up but I ended up selling my car for £200 or £300 less than what I bought it for 2 years ago. So for me, it just made sense that, you know, if I was going to change my car, this would be the right time to do it. Also, as well, what you're tending to find is it's not just the chips in the test kits. It's also the raw materials used for making cars. It actually comes from Ukraine, and because the Ukraine is currently at war with Russia, it's difficult to get those raw materials, which has then led to a demand for new cars, which has therefore led to long delays and lead times. And as a direct effect, what you're finding is that second-hand car market continues to be in high demand. So if you've got a second-hand car, I would check the value of that car, because it won't be what you expect it to be had it not been for COVID, the pandemic, and the Ukraine war with Russia. So for me, I decided that I was going to buy a new car, and one of the cars that I had on my vision board was an SUV, an Audi SUV, because I was driving an Audi before, and I wanted an SUV, and I had it on my vision board for about just over a year, and I just made the decision that, you know what, I'm just gonna buy my car. But I want to rewind a little bit. I spoke to you guys in a previous episode about vision boards and being able to manifest things that you can see. I want to talk about the environment as well. What do I mean by that? Where Kay and I were living before, quite a nice area, yeah? And we had our vision boards, we knew what we were trying to manifest individually and collectively as a couple. But every so often, we would go for walks in our local area, and we would see the most beautiful townhouses, and that's where I fell in love with townhouses. I would see some of the most beautiful cars, and every time I saw an SUV, I would literally walk and I'd look at it and be in awe of it. And especially during the lockdown, when you could only go for certain, they would say you could go for a walk once a day and things, I would go for walks. And I would go to, really go for a walk, and some, certain areas slightly outside my immediate area, I would walk there, and I would have a look at kind of the architecture of certain buildings. And I said to Kay, I remember saying to Kay, I said, part of what we want to manifest has to be also putting ourselves in the environment to be able to see the things we want. And Kay said, I completely agree. Because even before the lockdown, Kay and I would go to certain areas. So, Sloane Square, we would look at the houses. We would really kind of put ourselves around the things that we wanted for ourselves, both individually and collectively. There has to be something to be said for your environment. Some people are a product of their environment, yeah? And I would say that growing up in Tottenham, I became a product of my environment. I reflected what my environment was. But when you allow your mind to understand that there is a world outside where you live, that starts to create the vision of what you want for yourself. So before COVID, Kay and I used to go to different places, and we would walk around, we would look at the cards. We would want, in order for us to bring to life our visions, we would have to see the things that were attainable. And even if it wasn't attainable right now, we had to see those things to believe that it was attainable one day. And I feel like people underestimate how important environment is, even in the workplace. You could work somewhere, achieve all your objectives, and continue to work in a toxic environment and feel stunted. And the reason you feel stunted is because your environment is not conducive to progress and growth. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if we then think about life in general, in order for you to manifest the things you want to see, you have to actually see them. So you see them in your vision board, but you have to see them. So I had a friend, and for the longest time, she wanted to emigrate. She wanted to emigrate to Houston, Texas. And what she would do is every year she would go. She didn't know anyone there, but she would go. Because she wanted to immerse herself in the environment that she wanted to exist in. And when she does that, what she's doing is she's feeding into her vision in order to manifest that vision. She had to think it, she had to breathe it, and she had to live it. Your environment is so important to what you want to manifest. And if you're not in that environment, you need to go to the environment. Every single time I would park my car, my Audi A1 Sport, in the underground car park, I would walk around the car park and look at the SUVs. Anytime Kay and I felt as though the house build was either taking too long, it was becoming quite complex, we would go for walks in places where we knew there were really nice townhouses. We would go there. You have to believe in the strength of your own mind. And you know, people say you have to feel it. And you know, that people take the mick out of it, but it's true. You know, you have people like, I know this is going to sound a bit crazy, right? But follow me here. Bugsy Malone is one of my idols. I have a couple of idols, but Bugsy Malone is one of them. And I'll tell you the reason why. He believes he is great. He don't give a shit what you think. And he puts himself in and amongst that greatness. So for example, he wanted to be in, I can't remember the director's name, Guy Ritchie. He wanted to be in a Guy Ritchie film. And he would go to premieres. He would go to certain parties. He would do certain things to put himself around Guy Ritchie. He fully believed that he would be in a Guy Ritchie film. Bugsy Malone had no acting experience whatsoever. In fact, he's a musician, right? But because he wanted to manifest this, he had it on his vision board. But he knew he had to take it a step further and introduce his visions into the environment that he wanted to be in. Did Bugsy Malone not star in a Guy Ritchie film? Yes, he did. When you are seeing the success of other people and feeling jealous and envy, I have to really feel sorry for you. And I'll tell you the reason why. You don't even have the drive to manifest the greatness that you want, but you see other people doing it, and yet you feel a level of negativity and resentment towards them, but you haven't done the basic work of even putting together a vision board. You haven't done the basic work of putting yourself in the environment of going to see the things you want to manifest. You've decided to take the lazy approach and just wish. Wishing is the lazy approach, because wishing is not manifesting. Wishing is just the thought of want. It's just a thought of want. But when you want to build on that wish, you create the vision board, the visuals, the accountability. And then you have to then actively be proactive in putting yourself in the environment that you want to visualize as a reality for yourself. I knew when I finished uni and everything, there was a period of my life where I just wanted to be famous. I've got to be honest, I just wanted to be famous. And I went into African entertainment TV presenting, and I didn't just go into it. I had it. That is what I wanted to do. That was my vision. That was my vision board. I wanted to get into African entertainment. So you know what I did? I put myself in the environment. How did I do that? I went to Notting Hill Carnival, and they were like, filming. There was like production crews doing all their stuff. And I was standing there in the crowd, and a guy came over to me, and he had a camera, and he had a mic in his hand. And he says, "You?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you think you could present?" I said, "Yeah." He gave me the microphone. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just knew that this is what I wanted to do. I put myself in the environment. Anytime somebody with a camera spoke, I was always the one that would just talk and, "Hi, I'm Toya, da 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 da." So this was different. Somebody actually put a mic in my hand. And I kid you not, those people who know me, like the real OGs that know me, they know how this story started. From there, within 2 weeks, I was flown out to Nigeria. I signed a deal with Hit TV, and I was going back and forth from the UK, from London to Nigeria. And I was hosting shows, I was hosting events on the red carpet, I was doing shows here in the UK, and then I wanted to do Big Brother. And I had that in my vision of what I wanted. I had to put myself in the environment. What was the environment? I went to the auditions. That was the environment. I put myself in the environment that I wanted to manifest. I went by myself because, you see, when you want to visualize something, when you want to create something, when you are trying to manifest something, sometimes you have to walk the journey by yourself. Not sometimes, all the time. Because you're doing this for yourself. You want it for yourself. I went on my own. Nobody came with me. When I went to the auditions, people were with their friends and everything. I went through, I think, 4 or 5 rounds of audition by myself. I had taken myself from my room into the environment that would create the opportunity for me to realize my vision, to become someone, to be famous. And I went on one of the biggest reality shows of the UK. I went on to Big Brother 2014. And some people have asked me, well, how did you get on there? Well, I was just myself. I wanted it. I believed I could have it. I put myself in the environment to make it happen, and I manifested it. It's really that simple. There's no airs and graces about me. You guys know it. I'll just tell you the truth. I don't have 2 heads. I'm just me. I knew when my dad died that I couldn't continue on. I walked away from a lot. I walked away from contracts. I walked away from opportunities. And I was able to fall back on my career in that I'd done the education, I had my experience, I was able to fall back into my career. And then I knew that in order to be great at what I do, I had to become a subject matter expert. And whilst it wasn't obvious to me straight away, as I continued to progress in my career, as I navigated, as I started to understand my purpose, I knew that in order to be in a certain tax bracket, in order to earn a certain amount of money, I had to be a subject matter expert. I had to find a niche. So then you put yourself in that environment to find that niche, right? You put the environment you put yourself is, applying for certain jobs, being in the environment of greatness, being able to work at Goldman Sachs. Now, of all the negatives of Goldman Sachs, what I will say to you, the affiliation, to be able to work in that environment, it kind of brewed greatness within me, because I was working with some really intelligent, really talented people. So you had to be able to almost be in that environment and see yourself in that greatness by seeing other people in their own greatness, if that makes sense. Once I had kind of worked at Goldman Sachs and everything, I realised at that point, because I'd already then manifested kind of the niche. I put myself in the environment, I found my niche. Then every role that I had afterwards was a build on what I envisioned in my mind and in myself of what a subject matter expert would be and would look like. So every decision I made would be motivated by that. So then my environment would basically grow that. Every environment, every workplace that created that environment for me would build upon my vision for me to manifest being a subject matter expert. Does that make sense? And now I am that, because I made the sacrifices, I worked hard, I had a vision, and I put myself in the environment to be able to realize that vision. Now, the reason why I have named this episode Blackexit is because I feel like as Black people, we are now realizing that we need to exit the toxicity of white oppression. We're realizing our greatness as Black people, as a community, in a way that I don't think we have ever done before. We are understanding that affluence is attainable for us too. As a community of Black people, we understand and we are able to appreciate what success means, because we are breaking generational curses and we are sowing the seeds of generational wealth. The area in which me and Kay currently live is Black affluence. And it's a Black affluence that needs no introduction, because when we look at each other, when we're going to our cars, when we're leaving our houses, we all look at each other and there is this silent, unspoken nod. You know, there's this nod that I feel so proud to see my fellow Black people every morning doing what they do to be great. And you can see it. Black people here are more dominant than non-Black people where I currently live. And it's inspiring, it's motivational. And my environment is now conducive for me to be able to manifest even more things, because I'm seeing Black excellence. So if I'm in the environment of Black excellence, what am I going to be? A representation of that Black excellence. Do you understand why environment is very important? Environment and how you put yourself in certain environments to be able to manifest certain things. It's so important. It's so important, because if your environment doesn't allow you to realize greatness, you are not going to see the greatness that you're trying to manifest. So you have to take yourself out of certain environments and put yourself into the environments that you want to see yourself in. You have to be able to embody what you're trying to manifest. Does that make sense? And the only way to do that is to be in an environment where you can see what that manifestation looks like. All I've ever wanted for myself is to be the best in class at what I do. So in order to do that, I've had to, yes, become a subject matter expert, but I've had to be placed in environments where I'm able to see or have the potential for that to manifest. Does that make sense? It's really important as a community that we understand what our potential is, our potential to be great, but then put yourself in an environment where you can give birth to that greatness. That is your job, to give birth to the greatness that you have been manifesting. And, you know, for me, you guys know I'm very spiritual and I'm very clear about how I see myself. And there is so much more for me to achieve. I've got so much more to achieve. There's so many things that I want to do. And in order for me to do them, I understand that I have to place myself in the environments to be able to nurture that and be able to manifest it and give birth to it. Does that make sense? I think that, you know, no journey to manifestation is easy, and we are always going to, as human beings, make mistakes on the path, on the journey to greatness. But it's about accepting that part of those mistakes is part of the journey. Last week's episode was called Your Services, Thank You for Your Service. And a lot of the feedback I got was amazing. And a lot of people said to me, Toya, I can't believe you were going through that, but you were still delivering, and you never allowed it to consume you. But I'm also responsible for the choices I made. And whilst I had the very best intentions, I was doing the whole be a superhero for your friend, the reality is that I think I had to go through that to manifest certain things for myself as well. Because in order to be a subject matter expert, you have to understand the subject. You have to understand the environment that the subject lives in. And for me, being a subject matter expert in what I do means also working in and amongst people who are just intrinsically difficult. And being great at what you do also requires you to understand how to socially navigate too. And sometimes it's socially navigating people that look like you, who may not necessarily understand the fundamental and crucial elements of navigating the world of work whilst being a black woman. Okay? And I've taken my learning lessons. I understand the importance of my environment and how I navigate to be the best I can possibly be. And whilst I know that I'm going to make mistakes, and I've made mistakes, it's also about building and learning from those mistakes and being in an environment that is conducive for me to be able to learn. I really think it's important that if anything you take away from this episode is how to manifest the things that are on your vision board, to manifest the things that you want to create for yourself, by also going into the environments where you're able to see what that manifestation could possibly look like for yourself, being motivated enough to have it in your mind's eye to make it happen. When I look at my vision board, I think to myself, oh my God, like there's still so much to do. And sometimes it's easy to feel quite overwhelmed. But I feel like how I manage and mitigate feeling overwhelmed is understanding that things can only happen in its apportioned time. And whilst there are so many milestones to achieve, and there are a couple of objectives that need to be achieved, I'm still creating the environment to be able to achieve them. And it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing thought process. And this is why I think it's important to also really question why you want to manifest those things. What is it about manifesting this thing that will bring you the most joy? And if you're able to answer that question for yourself, that's all that matters. So I think I'm going to leave it there because, you know, as they say, those who have ears will receive the message that has been created for them to receive. And I really hope that this episode resonates with someone or all of you. And I really hope as well that you guys are understanding that navigating the world of work is also about creating and seeing the environment you're working in and whether it's conducive for the things that you're trying to manifest, and being able to navigate so that you're able to get certain things that will lead you to your next blessing of manifestation. Next week's episode, I am also going to talk about, I think you guys will remember, I was telling you guys I'm currently consulting somewhere, and the head of the commercial department basically sent an email, and you know, I spoke about it, and basically she wants me to do a foundation course. And nothing wrong with doing a foundation course, but I did a foundation course before I did my degree. I did a foundation course before I did my master's. I did a foundation course before I went to law school. I'm not going to do a foundation course for a contract that I have been contracted to deliver a service and provide them with contract management. to then be told by somebody who is obviously intimidated by me that I need to do a foundation course because for her it's mandatory. She still doesn't understand the concept of being a contractor, and even if it's mandatory, I'm sorry, it's not mandatory for me because I've already got the credentials required to do the job, hence why I was contracted to do it. And it's her way of throwing her weight around. And she has now resorted to harassing me. And I call it harassment because when you're sending your PA to send me emails and send me follow-up emails, and when you're sending me IM messages, and I've ignored every single one of them, do you know why? Because I'm collecting my money, and I'm not going to be pulled into a toxic situation that has nothing to do with me. If she has a problem with me, then she needs to speak to the project sponsor. The project sponsor has no time for her because the project sponsor knows my value and knows not to tip me over the edge, because if they tip me, I'll walk. I've got no problem with walking. And if I walk, they're obligated to pay me 4 weeks because we negotiated a 4 weeks mutual termination. So if they push me and I go, they have to pay that 4 weeks. They have to pay it because I didn't opt to go. We have an end date, so what is all of this? So next week I'm going to give you the follow-up to that because she's also resorted in having meetings and trying to cut me out. It's actually quite immature. And something happened today which was actually very funny, and I wasn't part of the meeting, I was just told about it. And she has since sent me an email, and she's requested my presence on a particular project that she's working on, and she wants to also discuss giving me a extension to work with her on a particular project, and she said it's contingent that I do the foundation course. You know what? I feel like my life is just a reality show. The world of work is a reality show, actually. It's all our reality, and it's all our reality show. The pomposity, the audacious audacity of this mad woman. And the thing is, I've realised, there are some white women, non-black women, that are so unnerved by the greatness that black people possess, that all they want to do is show us who is boss. But in showing us who is quote unquote boss, they make themselves look so small and desperate. Because now you need me. But your inability to see a black woman in the position that I'm in doesn't, you're too stubborn to be humbled by your need to have my skills. That you still want to wield your power by telling me I have to do one foundation course. I'm a consultant. Why am I doing your... Listen, it's even mad. I'm working out of scope. Why the hell am I doing it? And even if I was working in scope of IR35, why am I doing your course? A master's holder, you're asking to do a foundation course in contract management. I don't understand. She's actually mad. She's actually suffering. But you know what it is that she's mad about? She's mad that she doesn't have the power to make me. And this is the point. A lot of us, growing up in the world of work, and then now in the world of work, feel like, especially when you're first coming to the world of work, that you have to. You don't have to do shit, you know. You actually don't have to. They make you feel like you have to because then you feel like your job is at risk. In a buoyant market like this, she's very mad. But we'll continue that story next week. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Please, if you know anyone that will benefit from the podcast, if you have enjoyed this episode, share it. If you know there's somebody who will benefit from the podcast, understanding how to navigate the world of work, or the previous episodes, please share it. If you are listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review. I read all the reviews, by the way. And also, please rate it on Spotify. You're able to rate podcasts on Spotify podcast platform. So make sure you go there and do that if you're able to. If you have a work-related dilemma, then email hello@toyatalks.com because we have a dilemma episode coming soon because I've got a few dilemmas in the mailbox. Also, as well, if you want to follow me on social media, I have my personal Instagram page. The handle is Toya_Washington. I am also on TikTok. Toya Washington, all one word. Go ahead and have a watch of my TikToks. I do like quick tips. So my recent one was how to manage employment agencies. And those of you who listened to that podcast episode, which was in season 2, episode 8, managing employment agencies, you guys got a really full picture of employment agencies and how they work. But obviously in a short few seconds on TikTok, I share like quick fire tips. So if you're interested, go ahead and have a look on TikTok. I am also on Twitter, Toya_W, and of course I have my YouTube channel, and it's named At Home with Toya, and I just vlog about my life. I vlog about what's going on. They vlog this, I vlog that, and I'm just trying to be me. But listen, if you're also interested in booking me for a public speaking event, I have a website, toyatalks.com. Go ahead and have a look there. I have done public speaking for Sega World. I've done some stuff with the Arts Council. I've done some stuff with Moreham House Consultancy. I've worked with other organisations that are quite interesting, and I have a wealth of experience in terms of public speaking and delivering, conversation, talk and workshops on, navigating the world of work while black, understanding as black women how we navigate and how uniquely our navigation has to be in order for us to attain success. So if you're interested in booking me, go ahead and have a look at the website, or you can email hello@toyatalks.com. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to thank each and every one of you for joining me. Thank you so much for all your love, all your support. Please make sure you rate and review where possible the podcast. And we do it all again next week, Tuesday. My name is Toya Washington, and you have been listening to the Toya Talks podcast.